now let's focus on the better conversation around how do we use all the technology you have now more effectively? How do we empower your people? A lot of times, how do we train your people to use it better? And just really set your business up for success that way, right?
Welcome to Season 2 of Sell Me This Podcast. For our first episode of the year, I am super excited to welcome Shawn Freeman. Shawn runs Always Beyond, which is a managed service company right here in town, but also has a ton of experience that he shares around leadership, around building organizations, and around the future of the managed service industry. We're super excited to share this story with you. Have a listen. We are so excited to kick off another episode, and really the first episode of the new season of Sell Me This Podcast with a really special guest today. I'm excited to introduce you to Shawn. Shawn, we're going to dive right into things, and why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and where you came from.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Keith. Super excited to kick off the new season with you. Shawn Freeman. I'm born and raised in Calgary. There's a few of us around still. Yeah. My history is in IT services. I think I'll rewind it all the way to maybe when I was 13. My dad got me my first computer, 386, so not too far back. But I put it together myself with his help, and that really sparked my interest and got me really into tech and computers. Found me something that I was passionate about, and from there I just built on that. My parents actually went through a divorce, and so I got into the computers and really leaned into that. I was horrible in high school. I barely passed, did the minimum required, which is interesting. I gamed a lot and got C minuses on everything, and even including math. And then I was like, okay, what do I want to do with my life once that was over? And I decided to go to Mount Royal College. At the time, it wasn't a university yet, and so went into the computer information systems course there, and that I could qualify, had good enough grades. They let a rebel like me in, and I really found something that I loved. And like in school, I never really loved school, but now that I was focused on computer stuff and making things, and had some really amazing teachers there, I did really well. And in my first semester, I think I got a 3.88 GPA, just blew it out of the water. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm good at something, and that was pretty cool. It was a really good motivation builder for me. And then I started to think I kind of want a degree. I don't just want a diploma, and went down that path, talked to the counselors, and they said, well, you could do the university transfer, but your math sucks because you sucked in high school, right? And I was like, yeah, of course. And so I had to go back at that point, upgrade my math, my grade 12 math, and do that. And it's really funny because I got a 64 and I needed a 65. So I went back to the prof and I was like, hey, I need a 65 to get into calc. Is there anything that maybe was gray and maybe missed, or maybe could, and he's like, okay, yeah, I found something.
You found a rounding error for the
probably
1%.
Was a little bit mean on you there. And so he made the change, and I didn't have to do it again. And so that's kind of nice, kept the momentum going. And it was in 2007, and I remember the year pretty vividly, that I'd gotten accepted into the University of Calgary. I was going to transfer and start the computer science program, because in August 15th of 2007, I was in a pretty bad car accident. It was in the afternoon. I was just driving along, minding my own business, and a car, they were street racing in the middle of the afternoon for some reason. Lost control, came across the meridian and hit me head on. I was in my grandma's 1984 Volvo. Luckily, it was a big tank. Didn't have airbags, so I ended up with a broken jaw in two places, the front and the back, and my cheekbone broke as well. Shattered my knee on the dash, and I was in pretty rough shape. And that was interesting because people asked me, how do you feel about that being so far away from it now? And I was always answer the same. My answer's I wouldn't, if I could pay money and have that not have happened, I wouldn't. It was probably a really good thing for me. Gave me something to come back from, work hard, did all the physio. I actually ran a marathon about 2.5 years after. And so put in a lot of work to do that. It's funny, the lawyers on the other side of the case, they were like, here's some photos from Instagram of you running a marathon. I said, yeah, I did that so I could prove to myself I did everything I could for physio. And I straight up said that to her face, and that was the reason. and then they had no more questions.
Yeah.
And
That was
so,
it. You just shut them up at that point.
Yeah, I was like, do you want me to be a victim and, just pretend to milk the system or not? And so then that got closed out pretty quickly after. But, that was a pretty pivotal change in my life. And I remember I went to the U of C, and then a year later I did a semester in Australia, which I probably would have never done. I thought long and hard about it, and I was like, you know what, life is short. And it just instilled in me this belief that life is short, right? And even to this day, I'm like, if I'm ever like, gosh, should I spend the money to do the thing? No, do the thing, make the memory, right?
Well, and I think you hear that story a lot for people that have gone through some of those really trying experiences where they've had some of that hardship, they've had something they've had to overcome, where the perspective is completely different, but also when they look back, to your point, it becomes so formative in that hardship and who they are today.
Yeah.
That most of them that you talk to wouldn't change it as much as it would in the moment. If probably if you caught you 3 weeks afterwards while you're in physio or in the hospital or something like that, you're like, get me out of here.
Yeah, drinking protein shakes through a straw because my jaw was wired shut. Yeah.
Like in the moment, I'm sure it was one of the most challenging things you've been through. But that perspective probably really shapes who you are today.
100%, yeah, and that's the thing too. All these experiences, I've become a big believer of everything happens for a reason, the good and the bad, right? And so leaning into that and just really knowing that, because as you're building a business, you're going to go through good and bad, and you're going to have to persist.
Yeah. And so before we jump into your business journey, there's one other thing you mentioned that I found really interesting that I think is a little bit of a common thread sometimes, and it's not the, if you're kind of a crappy student in school, you become a successful entrepreneur. But I think that there seems to be a common thread of people that struggled in maybe a very traditional education setting and become successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Is there something to that connection that you can think of?
Yeah, I think for me, it was just, really, I was smart enough to know the things I didn't want to do and weren't going to be useful to me in the future. But I hadn't found that thing I was passionate about yet, right? And I didn't see how it could make me money, or this is before the time when e-games could make you lots of millions of dollars, right? Or I might have leaned into that some more. When I went to university, I actually gave up gaming because I was like, I won't do good if I keep that in my life. So I chose to focus, and it's funny too. The accident actually probably helped me in my school because I wasn't really able to. I wasn't super mobile for probably 6 months. Like I had mobility issues and had bones to heal and all that sort of thing. And so that helped me focus. I actually took some of my hardest courses that first semester, and I was, I had nothing better to do. So I went to all the after hours help that the profs gave, and one of them was math, and it was a pretty challenging math course, and I got an A+ on it. Like it was discrete mathematics, and like I went from barely passing calc. I think I got a C- in calc, but I got it, and I got into U of C to A+ in a math course, which was pretty amazing, and probably because of that focus.
That's amazing. Yeah. Like I definitely feel like that's a big turnaround on the math front, and I promise I won't ask you any multiplication right now.
Forgotten it all now.
Yeah, this is the calculus section of the podcast.
Yeah, and it's interesting as I learned like why math is important. Really, I've summed it up to like if you can understand logic as a technology person, that's really where the value is.
Yeah.
I don't need to understand how algorithms work.
Yeah.
If I can work a logic tree, that's usually gets me most of the way there, and pretty important for business, right?
Yeah, and I think there is something to the practical math side of things, where the ability to be in a meeting and kind of do some rough numbers on the back of a napkin. But if you're starting to do, advanced prediction or regression models in your head, I feel like we're having a different conversation.
100%. Yeah. You need definitely some accounting skills for sure.
And so then you've taken some of the, you've gone through school, you've gone through really a life-changing experience. How did you get into building your own business? Was it just kind of the progression out of school, or kind of how did you find yourself in that?
Yeah, there's. I'll dig into that a bit more too, and so. As a summer student, I had gotten a job at an oil company. I was at a company called CCS at the time, now Tervita, but recently got acquired by Secure Energy. And so I was there for a few years as a summer student. I had gone to Australia on this trip doing a semester abroad, and so that was amazing. And it's interesting, I knew I didn't have a job lined up to come back to because CCS wasn't hiring at the time. And I was out for a run, as you do in beautiful Australia, and I was like, why don't I just start up my own like little computer repair company? You know, there's the student painters out there, and it's like, I'm just going to call it Student Geeks. And so I went and bought the domain, put up a silly little website, and in no time I got like 2 calls. A couple of people called me and said, oh yeah, we could use some IT help. And you know, this is when SEO apparently was good, and I didn't really do much, and I got some calls, and out of that idea grew a whole bunch. And so lo and behold, I actually got a job coming back to Calgary because that wasn't enough income to keep me afloat. And so I got a job at another company that some people from CCS went to. So I signed up for that before I came back as an IT helper. It was me and my boss with the IT department at that company when I started. And I kept Student Geeks on the side. I had a couple little clients that I was helping in my free time. And interestingly enough, that kept growing, and that kept snowballing, sort of on the side, a little side hustle, right? Everybody, now it's the big thing. And so came back, worked that job. Secure Energy grew from 100 and so people to over 1,600 people in about 4 years while I was there. And I learned a ton of what I took into my business in doing IT services for small, medium businesses. And over those 4 and a bit years, my Student Geeks started to grow, and I had 6-10 clients, and I was like, okay, I can't manage both and feel good about it anymore. Obviously I wanted to maintain my reputation and keep doing the job I was getting paid for. And I said, okay, I gotta leave Secure. And I was like, I'm gonna take the jump and make the leap. And that was in 2011, right before the 2012 downturn in oil and gas. And so luckily it worked out, because I was talking to myself. I was like, do I take the leap? And I'm like, worst case I can get another job, right? Like the market's good, but then it wasn't. And so but it was good for being an owner of a company in the managed services world, because people were like, how do we cut our costs? How do we outsource a few things? And IT was one of those expenses that a lot of people looked at. And so I was able to say, hey, you can outsource it to me. It's a bit cheaper. You still get everything you need. And it's flexible as you kind of grow back out of this. And then I built a business off of that.
And so when abouts would that have been? So 2012, you're building that. And this would have almost, if I'm kind of looking back too, still being very much like IT is a cost center. IT is...
everybody wants to pay hourly still.
Right.
And so what I did is actually... I did 2 things right at the beginning. I said, I'm not going to charge $50 an hour. I'm not going to, just price myself really low just to get work. And I'm not going to charge hourly. I said, there's got to be a better way to make it more predictable. And so I would go in and I'd say, okay, you've got this many users, you've got this many computers. Here's a 1 monthly fixed fee. Right. And most people were like, oh, that sounds good. And they're like, okay, so we don't have to worry about our bill changing every month. And so I kind of like stumbled into managed services before it was a thing and starting to become a thing. And that worked out really well because it set me up with a good foundation to hire from and build a business off of. And that recurring revenue is obviously gold, right? It helps you start, right?
Yeah.
That's where we started off. Luckily, out of that downturn came a lot of people getting laid off and then starting their own businesses. And a lot of those people that I built relationships with and became friends with at places like Secure Energy started companies.
Right.
And they hired me because they're like, well, who knows IT? Shawn. Like, we know he was great at Secure and he's going to be great with our business. And so all those relationships turned into business for me. That downturn probably boosted my business more than I could have ever with some sales and marketing tactics, right?
Well, and that's one thing I've always admired about you as well, is I think that you put such an important focus on that community. And so if you were to kind of be giving advice to someone that was building their business or even building or starting their career, how important is community as you're growing both kind of professionally, but also in terms of just your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I look back now and it's just, I've got friends that I've made through business. I've made through just being out in the community, helping people when, I didn't need anything from them, right? If you give to others, it'll come back, whether it's from them or other people, right? The law of reciprocity, right?
Yeah.
And so really focusing on that. The best time to plant a tree is yesterday, right? And that's the thing too. Like there's all these sayings. Your network is your net worth, but how do you build a network? You build friends, right? As I built up TWT Group, which Student Geeks got renamed to because we figured we should professionalize it after I graduated. I just built friendships, and they turned into customers, and that's super valuable, and that's translated into so much success over the last 15 years for me, and I've been able to help a lot of people as well, right? And what goes around comes around.
Well, and I'm more on the front end of the journey, but I think that having that community around you as well just makes it so much more fun.
Oh yeah,
like I think
it's great. I get to work with people that are great to work with, and they value what I do. I value what they do. I support them. They support me. Like, what's better than that, right? Calgary is this unique city a little bit. Everybody knows everyone, right? It's interesting. I've gotten clients just because I was friends with them. They're like, yeah, our current guys are fine, but like, you're my buddy. I'm going to buy from you, right? And honestly, like, to be an MSP on the other side sucks, but like, sorry, like I can't, they're my friends. I'm just making friends. And so that's the advice I tell any business owner, especially if you're in B2B, right? Just make more friends, and then it turns into business. And then you get to enjoy it better. You're not just another commodity or another vendor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that you're spot on. There's so many people that are so laser focused on the goal that they miss getting to know the person.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite quotes that I've heard recently is, "In order to be interesting, be interested."
Yeah, it's curiosity is amazing. It's super valuable. And the other thing too is, I always tell people, if you want something, give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? If I want more clients, how do I help somebody else get more clients? Like Keith, think about you. If I want clients, how do I get Keith more customers? Yeah. And then you're gonna have the same thoughts. You're like, how do I help Shawn? He's helping me so much. Like, that's just how humans are.
Well, and that's what I think, especially and I think people are like that for sure. But Calgary specifically, I think you hit the nail on the head. Yeah. Does have a very specific feeling in terms of how people want to see everyone around them succeed, and want to see that whole ecosystem propel. And
100%.
And you have a unique perspective. Like, there's not too many Calgary born and raised. You are a little bit of a unicorn.
Yeah.
Has it always been like that? Like, I consider myself a Calgarian, but I've been here for 20 plus years now, so I feel like I can wear the badge with honor.
Yep.
But has it always been like that since you remember?
Yeah, as long as I remember, and honestly, in the business world, it even gets more, because if you think we're a city of 1.7 million, business owners make up 1, maybe 2% of that, right? So it's a small amount of people at the end of the day, but it's enough to build a really good business. It's enough to really help other people's businesses, but then also like pair some community impact on top of there, give back to the community. It's a city that really rewards that, right?
Yeah.
Like caring about the community, caring about other people.
Yeah, and I feel like as much as there sometimes is a scarcity mindset, I feel like maybe it's the oil backing, or maybe it's the kind of entrepreneurial backing of the city, where I think people are less afraid to help someone in fear that they might be losing something themselves.
Yeah. And honestly, one of my favorite quotes of 25 is like, the universe is not on a budget. Right? We just get in these scarcity mindsets, and it's totally manufactured in our mind.
Yeah.
But again, if I want something, how do I help other people get it? It'll come to me, right? It can't not. The universe is going to be like, oh, you're out there helping other people, figuring out, like, we're going to take care of you, right? And if everybody operated with that mindset, like, imagine where we would be as a society.
We would just do incredible things.
Yeah, and we are doing them.
Yeah.
We could do more.
And faster.
Exactly.
Do you feel like you developed that mindset through your career, or is this something that, even if you look back to starting your first businesses and starting to, kind of the scrappy underdog?
Oh yeah. No, we were scrappy at TWT.
Yeah.
People did not like to compete with us. We had that reputation, and honestly, it's interesting nowadays, like people still don't like to compete with us because they know like if I have a relationship, they're never going to win the business.
No.
Because I've had that relationship for a decade.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe they weren't even a client before, but now they are because they're like, we just, we're doing such amazing things. We're helping people out. They want to be a part of that. Right. Like we've just built this amazing, I don't know what to call it, but I think I've learned that skill set over my time. Right. Like, when you're trying to pay your bills and, make the rent payment, like you got to find the revenue one way or another. And so, I would call them mistakes. I've made mistakes where I've, done something that, I'm not proud of today, but I got the business. But we all learn. We're all gonna figure it out. I forgive myself, and and now how do I get back? How do I help others? Right.
And so tell me more about the TWT story then. So I feel like there's a couple more chapters in that book.
For sure. Yeah, we can dig into that. So started in 2011, from Student Geeks, side hustle turned full-time job, snowballed into a business. We grew that up until January 2020 to about a $5 million company, 23 people, really amazing team, super amazing reputation in Calgary. And we were approached in 2019 by a national company called Fully Managed. And I really looked up to them, actually. We had been kind of friends and shared ideas. We had really good cultures. And they came to me and said, hey, would you want to think about joining us? Here's our plan. We want to grow. We want to go acquire some other businesses, take all the impact we're doing and just scale it across Canada. And that sounded really cool, and I thought that was going to be amazing for my team. Definitely looking back, there was some good and some bad. Lots of good came out of it. We did really good things. COVID hit 2 months after we finished the acquisition, and so that was a pretty cool journey to sell a company. Before I think it was 35 at the time. Yeah. At $5 million, the price was right. My team all got stock options at the end of the day. The vision of what those would turn into was pretty amazing. Didn't totally come to fruition, but you can't get it all right. You do your best. You're doing the right thing with the information at the time, right? And that's just like a theme through business. Yeah. You're just figuring it out as you go, right? There's no playbook. So we sold TWT, and I stayed on through COVID. I stayed on for almost 3 years. 2 years after Fully Managed acquired TWT Group, TELUS acquired Fully Managed as a whole. And as a part of the initial deal, I actually kept some ownership in Fully Managed. And so I believed the vision that much. I kept some skin in the game. And then TELUS bought it. And about 11 months later, I realized I'm not a TELUS employee, as you could imagine. And so nothing against them, but decided to leave. And, had a year non-compete, so I kind of waited that out, and people were knocking hard and saying, where do we go? We don't like what's going on here. All those relationships came back, and even the ones that had already moved on were like, oh, we see you're back in business. Like, we'd love to work with you again. We moved somewhere, and they're okay, but you were always better. And so here we are in those relationships again, right? And so put the team together and started another company called Always Beyond. So IT services company. Also, alongside that, prior to launching that, I created a coaching program for MSPs. And so what I said is like, what could I have used 5 years ago as an MSP owner? Like, what would be useful? And so I built this online platform, a community mastermind group, and I coach MSPs. And I coach other MSPs that are competitors of mine in Calgary, like geographic competitors. And they love it because they're like learning all my secrets, which a lot of them aren't tricky. Yeah. They're very simple, but some of them take time. Planting seeds, building relationships, building networks, helping others before you ask them to help you. All those things, and then obviously all the tactical things that I learned on the technical side of running an MSP properly and profitably, being able to help them scale. Because you've been in the MSP game. There is a variety of levels of quality of MSP because it's unregulated. And so I was like, how do we just raise the bar And if I can raise the bar for my competitors, it's going to make me better, right? Against that abundance mindset is pretty amazing. And honestly, there's so much business and market share, and the market's growing in the MSP space. Like, even if I don't get another customer, my business should double, right? Like, that's the market is doubling every 5 years, if not faster, right?
Yeah, the MSP market's a fascinating one, and I agree with you that there's such a wide variety of MSP types, delivery, philosophies, everything from, two people in a computer in their mom's basement, not to feed into a stereotype, to some of the large like multinationals. And, it's not a one size fits all. Like, we do some work with kind of helping people find the right fit for MSPs, and I liken it to dating, right? It's not all about the technology. It's not all about the processes. Those things are important, and if they're not there, those should be some giant red flags.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's, who are you going to be friends with? Who are you going to, when something happens, and something will happen.
And whose advice are you going to take because you trust them?
Yeah. Who do you want in the trenches with you as you make those business decisions that require technology? And I'm also, for better or for worse, a big proponent. How do you make it fun, right? I think that it doesn't have to be this meeting that you dread once a month or once a week or once a quarter.
100%. I mean, honestly, like MSPs, when you call in and you have a problem, like, we're kind of part technician, but we're also part like psychologist, right? Like, we're walking people off the edge. It's like, it's okay. We're going to solve it. It's okay. So people are in pretty, vulnerable emotional spots when they call in, especially if it's like a big issue, or, they had a phishing issue or they got hacked or something. Like, we become those rescuers, and it's a pretty cool business that way. I don't think there's no industry that's like that, right? And so, just really raising the bar of quality, helping these folks like myself that accidentally ended up with a business, actually know how to run a business, right? They know the tech. They're doing great. 1 or 2 person show can do, run circles around a big MSP because they're more technically rounded and they just know what they're doing. But do they know how to run a business properly so that they're alive in a year, right? Do they know what cash flow means, right? Versus, profit. They're totally different. And sometimes one will sink you even though you look profitable on the books, right? And so really helping people figure these things out, plan ahead, create visions of what their business could be, right? Because, they're running a $500,000 or $1 million or $1.5 million company, and they're thinking about the next 100K in revenue. They're not thinking about, where do I want to be in 10 years, right? And if you don't do that, what I've learned over my time is you just end up with what you end up with, and it's not intentional. So just, really trying to support other people. We've got people in my coaching group across Canada, across the US, and it's really cool. A lot of the problems are the same that people face. Yeah.
And so how are you coaching these MSPs? Like, because I know the exact type you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're brilliant technically, and it sounds like you followed in those footsteps.
Yeah.
Where you grew up with the technology in mind, not the business in mind. And flipping that switch is way easier said than done.
For sure.
What advice would you have to someone that's listening that is, we'll start on the MSP side. They've built an MSP, and they're at that exact fulcrum where they now, they're teetering on that revenue number. They have a couple team members, and they're starting to have to learn to run a business versus support customers. I know the answer could be join your mastermind, but is there any thoughts you have?
At the end of the day, your business is a mere reflection of your leadership abilities, right? And so if you have leadership abilities of $1 million MSP, then you're going to be stuck there. I've talked to people, they've been $1 million for 5 years, and we went from 0 to 5 and 8, right? And so and I, $5 million is my mirror, right? And how do I get past that? How do I grow past that? So really realizing at the end of the day that you're accountable for exactly where you are. And technology is not going to help you scale past $1 million, right? A better stack, hiring another tech, a lot of those things that you might need to do, sure, but that's not going to unlock the 5 million or the 10 million. It's becoming a better leader. It's getting out of your own way. Some really significant skills that people have to learn. And if you don't learn it, you're just going to be stuck is micromanaging, delegation, right? The one mistake I see a lot of MSP owners make, their first hire is the tier 1 tech. And a person in my coaching group, they're like, I need to hire a tier 1. I'm like, okay, tell me how much of what you do today you can delegate to them within 2 months. Onboard them, get them comfortable, show them all your systems. How much of what you do today can you give to them? They're like, oh, maybe 30%. I was like, so you're going to free up 20 or 30% of your time. That's not enough. Like, your first hire needs to be somebody you can give 80% of what you're doing. And if you can't do that, then you need somebody more technically savvy.
Yeah.
Those early days, that really high tech, you can just delegate it to them and trust that it'll get done and you don't have to babysit, are super important. And so just a couple small tactical moves. They have a hard time swallowing the pill of like, oh, I'm going to have to pay 80 instead of 40, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, but it's going to unlock so much more for you, right? You can go focus on only what you can do as the owner of the business, and that's the sales, the strategy, creating a vision, your 10-year vision, all those things. You can't hire a tech to help you with that stuff, right?
Yeah, and definitely unlocking that time, because time is the most valuable commodity you have, and that leverage of what you can do with that time.
And those early days, you got to use a lot of that time to learn those leadership skills. You gotta learn the strategy. Find a business coach. It doesn't have to be me. Like, any business coach can help you figure out your mission, vision, and values, right? And so go find those people, lean on them. Go to your accountant, ask him every question you can think of until you understand your books. Yeah. People under $1 million have no idea what their P&L says or means. They don't even know what their cash flow is. So figure that stuff out, because if you don't know how to run your financials and you're at $1 million, you will never get to 5. Cash flow will hold you back the whole time.
Yeah. Well, we'll loop it back to your math conversation at the beginning. Like, I think that those are some of the skills, whether or not you're an entrepreneur, the ability to understand money, the ability to understand financials is a much rarer skill than I anticipated.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of people in the world that really understand how the money works on that front.
100%. And if you don't have a CFO, your job as a CEO is to make sure you have enough money in the bank. That's number one job.
Yeah, don't run out of money.
And number 2 job is to make sure that your sales are strong, right? Like, if you don't have a salesperson, that's on you. If you can do those 2 things, then you have a really good foundation for scaling an MSP. And being able to hire those techs that are, the right fit, the right technical expertise that you need.
For sure. What about on the other side? So we talked about the MSP side of things, and how you level up. What if you're the customer of one of those MSPs, where you're working with them? They're awesome people, but they're struggling to turn in that corner as well. Mm-hmm. And is there any advice you have for the people that consume MSP services around kind of picking that right partner?
Yeah, good question. I think consumers of MSP services, so other businesses, they don't have a lens into our world, right? They get all these buzzwords and they get excited, and AI this, cybersecurity that, and they come to the MSP and they're like, what do we do? And your MSP probably gives you, here's a couple ideas, but you have to realize they're probably figuring it out like you are, right? Because things are moving so fast in the MSP space. And so I've been really fortunate that my clients have given me the grace to learn and figure it out, and obviously be ahead of them in most cases. But sometimes you just can't be, right? There's so much going on in the MSP space. I think what businesses are slowly shifting towards now, and like you alluded to earlier, is that technology and IT services are really drivers of business outcomes. So if you can get really clear on what your business goals are, and whether that's profit, growth, efficiency, and you can bring that to your IT provider, this is the conversation a lot of companies avoid, because they're like, I don't want to tell my IT guys that here's our growth goals and here's our efficiency goals, because it's just like too internal, too secret. But if you don't tell them, then how do you expect them to help you with technology to solve those problems? Because nowadays the answer is more and more becoming the answer is technology, right?
100%. And I feel like there was this giant push over the last 10 years in the MSP world to really standardize everything. So there was a ton of M&A. There was a ton of best practices, and there's a few voices that have said, here's what an ideal MSP looks like.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have started to really mirror each other in terms of those best practices.
Yeah.
I think, to your point, where that starts to fall apart a little bit and where companies start to hit some of that friction too is when you start to go outside of the standard to some of their core applications or the things that make them money as a business.
Yeah.
There's this friction point when it's out of scope.
Mm-hmm.
How are you seeing that shift in terms of service delivery within your own business, but also in the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I think all of that outcome work is becoming projects, and really people are starting to think about is like, how can I spend another $5,000 a month with my MSP to come in and do business process optimization, look at a problem we have and help us navigate what technology makes the most sense to solve that. How can I spend $5,000 to bring them in every month, get them involved in my business, and turn that $5,000 into a huge ROI, right? Because you could easily, any MSP can easily come in, you give them $5,000 a month to focus on this stuff. They can save you more than a full-time equivalent of hours in a year. And then after that year, it's just gravy. So you're investing and you're seeing an immediate return on results on that investment. And then you just compound that, right? It's the, your constant improvement. And so that's the shift of MSPs. All the operational stuff, the cybersecurity, the setting up new users, all that stuff is just operational. And so we're seeing this split. MSPs are like, yeah, we can do operational IT all day, every day in our sleep. There's per user fee. Off you go. And then now let's focus on the better conversation around how do we use all the technology you have now more effectively? How do we empower your people? A lot of times, how do we train your people to use it better? And just really set your business up for success that way, right?
I really like that analogy you used of the ROI, especially when it comes to some of the intangibles like the business process stuff, where it's tough. I guess you can have a book of like knowledge-based articles at the end, but it's tough to see in a traditional sense sometimes how that turns a lever from an ROI standpoint, right? Like I think if you, in a very crude example, if I go buy a tractor, I can see how that makes me money.
Yeah.
What do you wish business owners or business leaders knew about some of the technology ROI that's just a hard hill to climb right now for them with just the way that business has been done for the last X number of years?
Yeah, I think two things. I think business owners need to get more comfortable with change. They can't just be like, oh, these systems work, they're fine, we'll just put another body in. They just need to be like, okay, we're comfortable with change. And then number two is the CEO and like the executive leadership teams have to be the drivers. Right? You can't just delegate your IT to your office manager and then hope you get results and get ROI. It needs to come from the top, and it needs to be a part of your business plan, right? You need to be like, okay, Amazon's throwing robots everywhere. We're not doing that. And we have a warehouse. Why are we not? Okay, how do we dig into that? Where do we start? Your MSP might not be the person to sell you the robots, but they can sure help you navigate where to go, what to think about, the things you might need to upgrade to be ready for it. A lot of people have a ton of technology debt. If you have a server in a closet in your office, you're probably at least 5 years behind technology already. You need to take that old ERP that still relies on a server and you need to upgrade it yesterday. It's going to cost you $100,000. You have to do it. Otherwise you will get run over by your competitor, right?
So I'd love for you to paint that risk a little bit more as well, because I agree with you 100%. Yeah. There's this hesitancy to act, but we're not slowing down.
No.
The genie's not going back in the bottle.
No.
And the things that I love are that AI, security, technology are now becoming part of I'm a popular guy at barbecues now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't go back.
No.
And we're not going back. Like we're not going back to on-prem servers. We're not going back to some of these legacy technology philosophies. How do people start to make some of those shifts, and really, like, what happens if they don't?
Yeah, I think the biggest hesitation I see from a business leader in saying we don't want to change our ERP or like our core line of business application, we're going to keep the one that's on a server, we're going to just keep limping along, is they don't want to cause more work for their people, right? It's the short term, it's that 12-month project that's going to be really painful, But once you get past it, the light on the other side of that tunnel is awesome, because now you can integrate tools, you can streamline things, you can ask your people, what do you hate doing every day? And you can figure out a way to automate it, right? You can make their jobs easier. You can have them focus on higher value things. Because the problem is if you don't rip that Band-Aid off, you will have to eventually. And then the other thing too is that as a leader, you need to train your people that change is okay. But you also need to set them up for success, and you have to give them a bit of time and give them the resources to do these projects, right? Say, okay, we're going to bring in 1 or 2 people as consultants to help out. We're going to take that off your plate so you can focus on this project. You need to figure out that plan and make it work for them. At the end of the day, even back to the MSP comment I made before, is like you're ultimately accountable as a business owner for the success of your company, right? And I don't see a future in 10 years or even 5 years where companies running a line of business app or a ERP on a physical server are around anymore. Like I think their profitability is gone. Their competitors are eating their lunch because they're doing it 10 times more efficiently because they have, better systems, better processes. Their people are doing more valuable things. And so you need, as a business owner, to look at that. And the other problem too is there's all these folks that own a business that are like teetering on retirement or selling. And so they're like, well, I'm not going to do it because I'm selling in 3 years. And it's like, okay, well, if I'm a buyer of a business, I'm probably aware of that. And either you're going to take advantage of that and that's going to be factored into the price. Or if you're ahead of it, maybe you get more money. And your team is set up for better success on the other side of that.
I agree. We've started to see some of those discussions where it does get factored into your enterprise value of what is the backbone of your organization, and how have you integrated technology to differentiate.
Yeah, I'm talking to clients that are doing M&A, and I'm like, you should do a technology audit as a part of your due diligence, which hasn't been a thing of the past. Yeah. But now it's like, oh, you have some serious tech debt. Like, well, your computers are 6 years old, so we're gonna have to come in and spend $500,000 on computers. Yeah, like that comes off the purchase price, right? And not only like how you do anything is how you do everything. So it just shows how the business is run. Yeah. Because if you don't have, if the welder doesn't have a good welder, the product's not coming out well, right? Same on the IT side, right?
Well, and I think that just especially as the workforce starts to turn over as well, you hear these stories of someone walking into their, Windows, and this is probably a little bit dramatic, but their Windows 95 desktop computer, the big, like this old CRT monitor, and just walking out the door on their, this is not for me, because that's, it's the way of the dodo on those ones.
I've seen a client give a new employee a 5 or 6 year old computer, and that person leave 2 weeks later. Yeah. And our tech was like, hey, like, why'd you leave? And they're like, they won't give me good tech. Like, all their systems are like hard to work with. Like, I just can't do it.
Well, and it becomes an expectation, right? And like, I've had this conversation as well with our own team, which is, the output, especially for some of these digital natives. Yeah, for sure. The people that have grown up with this technology is insane. But if you also give them an abacus to do your books, it's not going to last very long.
But if you embrace that, you get the ROI of it, right? Like, people, they make the argument to me, they're like, oh, Macs are so much more expensive. I'm like, yeah, but they're faster. They never have issues. So I'm always productive, and they last for 5 years at least. People are using 10-year-old Macs and they haven't slowed down, right?
I'm glad I have a fellow Mac brother in here because, I feel like we're the only 2 MSP people that use Mac computers.
Every person in my MSP has a Mac.
Oh my goodness, you're speaking my language.
And the reason is because they all know PC. Yeah. And we're going to have a client that's mostly PC, and the 1 or 2 folks are going to be the CFO and the CEO with a Mac. And if that person calls in and you're fumbling around like you don't know what you're doing, who's getting a new MSP soon?
Well, and I've heard that this is getting way too specific, but the story of, the support ticket where they're like saying, well, just click the close button on on the right corner. If you're on a Mac, you're on
in a different spot.
You're a little lost there.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've gone almost 45 minutes without really diving into AI, and it's something that I do want to understand. I'm not going to ask you to pull out your crystal ball for what happens with the world, but I am going to ask you with some of your predictions around what happens to the MSP space.
Yeah.
Because there's been a lot of conversations around how that changes service delivery, how it changes the client experience. What's your prediction in terms of what people can expect from their MSPs in the upcoming years because of AI?
Yeah, I think you'll see MSPs differentiate themselves by using automation, using AI tools, streamlining things so that they can increase their gross margin and their cost of goods delivered. The thing about support is I think support as a whole is going away, right? If you have a client that's fully modern, fully cloud-based, modern technology, good laptops, the ticket amount should be very low, and any of the tickets that come in should be at least a tier 2 level, and probably soon a tier 3 level, right? Those tier 1 problems are gone, right? They're just disappearing. So support as an MSP offering is just disappearing slowly, right? So I think that's one prediction I have. I think 2 is that AI, obviously there's all the scare tactics and podcasts that are, in 2 years we're gonna all be on basic, basic
UBI
income. And so, but I don't think that's true. I think these adoption curves for businesses specifically are like a decade. So I think the adoption curve of AI is going to be 10 years. There's going to be the companies like Amazon and Google and Meta that are really way ahead, but all the small, medium businesses and folks that are doing physical things, manufacturing and trades, and like those things are going to take a lot longer to really adopt technology. But MSPs are leading that, right? So MSPs have to be ahead of it. They have to do it internally, and they have to build that muscle, and then they have to go to their clients and say, here's how we can help you. Here's what we've done for our business. Accounts receivable is all automated now, fully automated. We don't have a person. Let's do that for you. That's going to save you a full FTE, right? And let's get that person doing more valuable accounting work.
Right.
So I think that's the prediction. Over the next 5 years, that's going to be the big focus. And then there's going to be the MSPs that are like, I don't want to do the effort. I want to put the effort in, and they're going to, hang on to the physical servers and keep telling people that cloud's not secure, and we're going to leave those folks behind, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully they're close to retirement.
Fingers crossed.
So,
yeah, it's an interesting discussion, because especially when you think about the revenue mix and even the margin mix around kind of service versus some of the other elements of the business.
Yeah.
There definitely is going to be an evolution in the MSP space, and you're spot on. The ones that don't keep up are really going to have some challenging years ahead.
Yeah, and even software too, right? You look at all these vibe coding apps, and you're like, build me a CRM, and it builds you a decent CRM.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there will also be a shift where MSPs can be like, oh, you're paying X, you're paying whatever for HubSpot. Like, we could vibe code you one in about 15 minutes. Right. Let's sit down and we'll do it for you.
100%. And then there becomes the support of those things potentially, and the circle continues. But I think it was Satya Nadella that said, SaaS is dead.
Yes.
And I think that you're right. Like the use case of I can buy this specific platform for thousands of dollars a month, or I can build my own fairly seamlessly.
Yeah, for sure. Especially they're giving you the tools that are, built on their learning models, right? And it's like, when can I go to Copilot and say, build me my own 365?
One day.
I don't want to use Microsoft to host my email anymore.
I'll censor that part out so we don't get. I think this is going on YouTube, so
perfect. Yeah, we love Google. Yeah,
there we go. So I feel like you and I could continue this conversation for another 3 or 4 hours. If someone wanted to get a hold of you to learn more about you, learn more about either your consulting or Always Beyond, what's the best way to get in touch with you, Shawn?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Shawn Freeman, or ShawnFreeman.ca is my website. And love to connect.
Amazing. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. This has been a phenomenal discussion, and I thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on and let me share my story.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Have a good one. Thank you so much for tuning in. That was an awesome discussion, and really grateful that Shawn joined us. If you've made it this far, like and subscribe on YouTube, or follow and leave a review on your favorite podcasting platform so you don't miss any future episodes.